What's up, folks? I'm Mark Ryan. This is Super Review, and this is the Moondrop KATO. So, a couple of years ago, Moondrop came out with the Kxxs, and since then, for the past couple of years, Moondrop's basically just been releasing new versions of the Kxxs, but making it more affordable, which is a pretty cool way to do things, but also not necessarily progressing the audio game so much. But this, the KATO, is actually Moondrop's replacement to the Kxxs. And for that reason, I'm pretty excited about this. So because it's the replacement to the Kxxs, there are some things here in common. One, for starters, the price is in common. This is about $190. Two, it is also a single dynamic driver earphone. They describe it as a 10mm diamond-like carbon dynamic driver, whatever that means. And then I think the form factor, honestly, it is a new form factor, but it looks like it's pretty similar to the Kxxs. But other than that, what I'm really interested in is finding out how this thing sounds and how they've changed the sound from the Kxxs, Starfield, and Aria line. So just up front, this is not a review. I have not heard this earphone yet. In fact, it's still sitting here inside the box. And what we're going to do in this video, so we're going to unbox the KATO, find out what we get inside with it, and then I'm also going to throw it up on my frequency response measurement rig so that you can check out what the frequency response of the KATO is and compare it to some other earphones. If you're not familiar with reading frequency responses, check out my website at squig.link. There's a link in the description. And that's where the squig for this is about to be. If you're watching now live, we're going to do this live. We're going to measure it live. I'm going to upload it live, and you're going to be able to check it out for yourself. But I guess, let's see, anything else to say? I mean, shout out to Hi-Fi Go for sending this in for review. But apart from that, yeah, if you want the full review, please do subscribe to the channel, ding the YouTube bell so that YouTube lets you know when I am live. And an upcoming stream, probably within a week or two, will be my full review of the KATO. But for now, let's just go ahead and unbox it and then squig it. And we'll give it a little bit of a spin test, but you can see this box is a little bit on the large side, so not necessarily the best spin candidate for this show. But here you go. Here's the KATO box, which of course has a nice anime character on the front of it. I think it's a tasteful looking character, but otherwise, let's see, not much here on the front. We got branding on the sides, but we do have quite a bit of info here on the back, including Moondrop's own frequency response graph. And maybe I'll take this moment to just say, one, this is probably an accurate frequency response graph, and two, my graph will probably actually look a little bit different. And the reason for that discrepancy is we use different rigs. So when you are looking at frequency responses on the internet, it is important to remember that you are comparing a squig from one that was made on one rig to a squig that was made on that exact same rig. If you are comparing squigs across rigs, wow, that wasn't supposed to rhyme, but there you go. If you're doing that, you are bound to be basically just misinforming yourself. So this is a good reference if you are familiar with Moondrop's other squigs. But if you're familiar with squig.link squigs, well, you're going to have to wait until I squig this thing to really have a good sense for how this thing is different from the other Moondrops. Otherwise, what do we got going on this box? So we've got that's a lot of text. Well, let's see if we can get through it. So one thing I'm interested in, I'm just going to pronounce this thing KATO, and I'm also going to spell it with a lowercase ATO. Is this supposed to be like some sort of abbreviation? I'm not sure, but you make up your own mind. Like I mentioned, 10mm dynamic driver. They claim it has some ultra linear technology, which I gotta be honest, that just seems like marketing speak. I mean, I'm sure it means something in Moondrop inside their engineering labs or something like that, but to me as an outside observer, it's just a cool word to put on your box. Diamond-like carbon diaphragm, so like no beryllium silliness or anything going on here. Not that there's anything wrong with beryllium, but again, beryllium just kind of one of those marketing terms that to me on the user end side of things doesn't really mean that much. Otherwise, there is some diagram here, but honestly, I don't think any of this is going to be as interesting as what's inside the box, so let's just go ahead and crack it open. Ugh. Sometimes these things are hard to slide out, and this is one of them. But there you go. Throw her over there. And there is your box. Let's see. Black all around, but looks like you've got magnetic doors, which is fancy. see. It's interesting, actually. Look at that. They've actually still referenced the Kxxs name here. I don't know what to make of that. But then you do have the new Kato card, and pretty cool little graphic there, although otherwise, let's see. Some information about how to fit this thing to your ear hooks or your cable, which I guess is nice because I can imagine for a lot of new folks, that's a thing that you can get wrong, and I've seen some funny pictures, but we're not going to get that wrong, are we? He says as he gets it wrong. All right, let's see what else we get inside the box. You get a little card. Is this like a postcard? That's kind of cool. QC card as well. Here's the cable. We'll throw that to the side for a second. We'll dive into that in a bit. And then here is a QR code for all the QR code enthusiasts. There you go. Scan it now. I don't know what that takes you to. Maybe that gives you like free ice cream or something. I don't know. Probably not. Let's see what else we got in here. We got more. This is a lot of paperwork for an earphone, but there you go. Here's another bit of paperwork. I'm not going to spend the time to read that right now. I will spend probably my evenings from now on reading that, though. You do get a set of ear tips. In fact, it looks like 2 different sets of ear tips. Let's go ahead and punch in on this and talk about these ear tips for a second. So here you've got actually small, medium, and large in foam ear tips, which is nice. A lot of the times you get foam ear tips with IEMs. You only get one size. It's nice that Moondrop has included those, but I myself am not really much of a foam ear tip guy. I prefer silicone ear tips, and what's interesting is Moondrop appears to have come out with a new design for their pack-in ear tips. I'm pretty interested to see, one, how are these things in terms of comfort, fit, and stuff like that, but I'm curious to see if this becomes just kind of like the new standard Moondrop ear tip. We'll take a little bit deeper look at these things in a second. But I'm actually legit excited about those ear tips. Interesting, they also include a little carry pouch with, I'm going to guess like a, oh, this is where your swappable nozzles are. I'll go ahead and open this up real quick, but we're not going to do any swapping at the moment. It looks like the swap mechanism is going to be pretty similar to what we saw on the Dunu Falcon. So we'll punch on here. You get this little metal card to hold your nozzles, which is cool. But the mechanism is just sort of like a screw-in, and so the card has some threads on here with the matching threads on the nozzles. I honestly don't have a strong idea at this point what these are going to be doing, but we do have a frequency response measurement rig, and so we can tell. But I guess we'll put that back in here. No, we'll put that down here. This is a lot of stuff for this table. But see, here we've got a little Moondrop carry case, and this is a very nice carry case. I've actually got one a lot like this that I think came with my Moondrop Stardust. And as far as carry cases go, this is actually one of my favorite ones. It comes packed in just because it's got a simple magnetic clasp. It's not overly large. It will be probably a little bit of a tight fit for your IMs. I tend to find that it is with mine, but I actually prefer that. This just is, as far as an actual carry case to move around the world with your IMs, is actually a pretty good option. But let's go ahead and throw that to the side, and I guess we'll dive into the earpieces. Let's see if there's anything hidden below these things for a second. We do have a little compartment. I believe this is everything, though. That is everything. So, all right, we are finally to the nuts and bolts of the Kato. Let's move this stuff to the side and take a look at the earpieces themselves. And maybe this is a good time to mention that the Kato actually comes in 2 different finishes. You can now get this, and this is sort of the polished metal look, and there's also, or I guess polished stainless steel look, and then there is also a matte finish, a matte metal finish, which looks pretty cool, frankly, in pictures, but here in person, gotta say the polished look, never a bad look. Oh, we can do a little bit of ASMR peeling of the plastic cover, maybe. Can we get this off? Do I need glasses? Can both be true? Yes. So there you go. Quite the polished look. Let's see if we can get my goofy reflection in here. And it's got a bunch of angles on it here, so I don't know. Oh, there's my goofy reflection. There you go. That one's for the kids. But yeah, there you go. There is your Kxxs earpieces. I guess I should actually remove the cable from the packaging, because we're going to want to throw this thing on the cable, and I'm actually pretty interested to see what kind of cable they've included with this. I do understand that, so this, from what I understand, the Kxxs, the Kato is actually not quite available yet. It is available on pre-order, and it should be shipping probably within a week or so. And from what I understand, early pre-orders get a different cable, or maybe you get an extra cable. I believe the cable that I've got here is just kind of the standard cable that comes with the Kato. But yeah, let's go ahead and unwrap this thing and do a little bit of cable Olympics to figure out how this thing is likely to behave. This is the video where I struggle with Velcro. Maybe every video is the video where I struggle with Velcro. I just, you know, you gotta outsmart the Velcro, and that's kind of a tough task for me. There you go. Let's see, this is actually a pretty nice and thick cable. It's got maybe a little bit of stiffness and memory to it, but I have a feeling that with time, this thing will become a pretty solid cable. You do have it's got two cores, or two sort of main cores that are wound around. And it is a little bit of a loose wind, so you can see if I twist it like this, you can start to see through it. But I don't think that's actually a problem. It does not seem to be loose anywhere, which is good. You do have a Y-split here, which looks like it has an integrated chin slider. This is actually, hold on, let me peel some more plastic very awkwardly while I potentially finally congratulate Moondrop on including a chin slider with their cable. So Moondrop, kind of like notoriously, their cables all have, and I can pull on the Starfield in a second to show you, pretty much all of their cables have like a pretty large round Y-split piece that it's not a big bother, but it's a little bit unwieldy, and does interfere with the cable, the athleticism of the cable Olympics. Oh my gosh, I am so bad at plastic. Can somebody send help for this plastic? But yeah, so Moondrop's known for these cables that have fairly large and unwieldy Y-splits. And then they also don't tend to include chin sliders in their cables, which, you know, whether or not that's a big deal, you decide whether or not you need a chin slider. But look at this. That is a slim Y-split and a actual chin slider built into a Moondrop cable, and it actually seems pretty functional. Look at that. That is holding its place on the cable. I gotta say, honestly, at first impression, I'm pretty up on this cable. This seems like a pretty solid cable. Okay, enough about the cable though. Let's go ahead and throw this thing onto its ear hooks, and hopefully I get these things right. Moondrop typically does not label their 2-pin connectors very conspicuously, so you gotta like read the tea leaves, and there's an L and R in there. And sometimes you think you saw an R, but actually you saw an L. But let's see. Go with medium ear tips for now. Hopefully that works out. And finally, we will be able to see the completed Moondrop Kato. Interestingly, maybe worth calling out real quickly about these ear tips. It's interesting that these are almost sized like TWS ear tips, which is typically sort of that difference is that you can see the nozzle here is kind of like recessed, or it's sort of like inset from the outside of the hooded silicone bit. That's interesting. I actually tend to find that I like TWS ear tips on a lot of my IEMs, so that bodes well, if I'm honest. And then maybe also while I'm here playing around with the silicone, we can talk a little bit about it. You can see that it's got a nice pull to it, a nice spring to it. It is a fairly gummy rubber, certainly gummier than Moondrop's other IEMs. In fact, let me go ahead and pull in the Starfield so I can point that out. So this is like a typical Moondrop ear tip, which, you know, yeah, it stretches, but it's a little bit on the firmer side, and frankly, like this has actually got a little bit of a grippy texture to it, kind of like a little bit like Zelastec, but maybe not quite as grippy. Yeah, I'd say it's probably closer to something like a spin fit ear tip or a final E-type, which honestly, I like that. But let me go ahead and give this a quick roadie wrap. We'll see what this thing looks like all put together. And then I will, in a second, throw this on my microphone to get a frequency response measurement. But bada bing, bada boom, there is your Moondrop KATO. Bada bing, bada boom. No one ever says that. What am I, like 80 years old? Not that there's anything wrong with being 80 years old, but here you go, Moondrop KATO. Honestly, that is a pretty handsome little package. For 190 bucks, this is, unsurprisingly, Moondrop's generally pretty good with the price to performance or price to quality ratio, and at this point, I'm pretty impressed. Although, I think I should give it a quick fit test before measuring it, just to give you a sense of how this thing fits in an ear. And maybe before I throw it into the ear, just kind of like call out the shape, which is pretty similar to the Starfield shape, but it is a little bit more different than I expected. Let's see, external shape here is pretty much the same, but you do have this very interesting chiseled look on the inside versus the Starfield. Let me pull that in real quickly. I don't know, maybe it is actually almost exactly the same shape as the Starfield and Kxxs. Just plus extra chiseling. But okay, enough for the teasing. Let me go ahead and throw it into my ears. Make sure these nozzles are screwed in there well. And give it a quick fit test. So there you go. You can see the Moondrop KATO inside my ear. On first blush, it fits a lot like the Starfield, which is to say, generally pretty comfortable. It plugs into my ear nice and easy. You can see that it's not an especially large earphone. And it is sculpted in a way that it allows the earphone to fit really easily into my ear canal. The only thing I've said about the Starfield before is that it's not like the most secure fitting IM. And I think that's going to be also true here. We'll find out more as I live with this earphone. But it's like not a design that has, you know, little flanges that kind of grip into the inside of my contra bowl or anything like that. It's just kind of a general basic universal shape that should fit everybody. Probably won't be the most secure fitting, but I will say I do think that the extra grippy ear tips that Moondrop has included here are actually giving this thing a little bit better purchase on the inside of my ear, so it might actually end up being a little bit more secure than Moondrops typically are, just all from a little bit nicer tip. Of course, you could swap ear tips on whatever earphone you're listening to, but it's nice to have that included here in the box. But okay, that is, I think, enough blathering here about the KATO. I'm gonna go ahead and measure this thing. So I'm going to slide in my trusty 711 IEC 711 microphone. I'll plug it in down here at the other end. And let's try and make a frequency response. So drop this in. We'll make an estimate of about there, should be good. Set our volume and then jump over here to the software that I use for making frequency responses. So what you're looking at right now is actually a frequency response I made right before starting this video of the Moondrop Starfield, just so we had something as reference. But for now, I will actually disable that and we will attempt to make this squig. Let's see. Let's do it. You ready? Okay, the mind blow was a little bit exaggerated because I can't tell anything at this point. But looking at that squig right there, that is an interesting note. Let me reseat the earphone just a little bit here on the table because you can see I want this little peak that's showing up here. This peak you're going to see in almost every frequency response on squig.link. Usually I try to line it up with 8,000 hertz, and it can depend, like it varies depending on insertion depth. So I want to make sure this thing is lined up at 8,000 hertz so that it is as maximally comparable to my other squigs as possible. But let me do that. Did we get it closer? I think we got it closer. That might be a little bit too far. You know what? I'm gonna be really particular. I'm gonna try this one more time, trying to get it. So now you can see as I pushed in a little bit deeper, that resonance peak moved to just past 8,000 hertz, but I want it to be as close to 8,000 hertz as possible. Did it again. I overshot it. Let me try one more time. I'm not going to be too particular right now. Like if I can't get it exactly, I don't want to burn all your attention span on me making the same measurement over and over again. What I will do is get it right after the video. Ooh, is that one even further, or is that one better? I think that's the best one. I think that's the winner. All right, look at that. So let me go ahead and label this Moondrop KATO L. And then I know this also has different nozzles. I'm not sure. It looks like this is the silver nozzle. I will check out the gold nozzle in a second, but let me real quickly also measure the right channel and just kind of do a quick channel balance confirmation. Looking good. And I think I lined that one up pretty good on first shot. What do you think? Did we overshoot it? Well, I think we overshot it a little bit. Hold on. Please hold. I got it so close. I got to try one more time. I'm being really pedantic about this, but it is always satisfying when you get it exact. Okay, does that one look better? Which one looks better, folks? I think we're going to go with that one. Perfect. Okay. Let me go ahead and label this one now. Moondrop KATO R, and then I'm going to go ahead and export these. You're seeing how the sausage gets made. This is our channel. And export measurement as text. Moondrop KATO L. Okay, and then I'm going to go over to my other computer or my other screen and upload this to the internet. Where are my squigs at, bro? Hopefully you don't hear the leaf blower that it decided to start blowing right now, and if you do, well, hopefully it's not too obnoxious. I am looking for my squigs so I can upload them for the people, because the people demand squigs. There are no squigs there. Where are my squigs? Give me back my squigs, as Mel Gibson would say. Let's try one more time exporting these. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go. We're almost there, folks. And almost there. swear to you. Okay. Are you ready? So if we head over to squig.link right now, in real time, and if I refresh this, there, you have it. Your frequency response of the Moondrop KATO. And like I mentioned, when you're comparing these frequency responses from for any earphone, I think it's important to remember that it's best to compare them to frequency responses that were made on the same rig, and all of the frequency responses that I have here on squig.link were made on my rig. So if we wanted to pull up, let's say, for example, the Starfield, which everyone knows and loves, take a look and see what's different about the Kxxs just based on the frequency response. And let me go ahead and green and blue is mostly visible, but let's switch it to red. So Starfield in red and the KATO in blue. And you can see down here in sub bass, mid bass, lower mid range, and even into most of the upper mid range. Honestly, this aligns very similar to the Starfield, and that's not surprising. Moondrop, they're a company that has a very particular sound that they are typically after, and they are very, very good at hitting the frequency responses that they're after. Where we do start to see a little bit of difference, though, is interestingly here in what we'll call the presence region. It actually looks like the KATO is a little bit more relaxed in the presence region, which it looks like it's about 2 dB, so not massive, but it should be a noticeable difference there in terms of frequency response. And then the treble otherwise, frankly, looks pretty similar, although it's interesting that the Kxxs, the Starfield, and the Aria kind of all have this little peak out here in, at around like 12K. And it's interesting that the KATO actually has reduced that peak. Now that peak sometimes can actually be like a desirable thing. It can just kind of give you just an added sense of space and air to the sound, but it can also, for some people, because it's such a narrow band peak, be actually a little bit irritating. I'm really interested to hear if the reduction of that peak perhaps makes it a more laid back, easier listen, but maybe potentially at the cost of dimensionality, or has Moondrop maybe somehow figured out how to keep that dimensionality while reducing that peak. Oof. I'm interested to hear how this thing sounds. So, like I mentioned, this is not a full review. This is just the first look. We saw what's inside the box. We now see what the frequency response is. And if you want to check it out for yourself, please do. Right now, head over to squig.link. But I can't really tell you what this thing sounds like, other than tonally, it looks like it's going to be very similar to Moondrop's other single dynamic driver earphones, which is not a shocker. I am really interested to hear how this thing may compare to, and let me go ahead and pull these things into view. So of course the Starfield, but the comparisons that I think are going to be the most interesting for me are going to be the Tantrum Hana 2021, as well as the new Dunu Falcon Pro. And this is an earphone I reviewed a couple of months ago. Phenomenal sound for the money, also around 180, 190 bucks. Here's the Dunu Falcon. This is an item that I got in last week and I'm starting to evaluate it now. I think this is around 220 bucks, and then 190 bucks here for the KATO. These are 3 individual single dynamic driver earphones, all kind of priced in a similar place. I think this is going to be a really interesting comparison that is going to set the tone for a lot of conversation in the around $200 price range. This review will probably be the one that comes first, just because I've had this one first, or I've had this one for the longest. But when I get to the KATO review, it's going to be an all-out war between these 3 IMs. And if you're interested in that, please do subscribe to the channel and ding the YouTube bell. I'm supposed to say that or something. But I guess that's going to do it for this video. If you liked it, please do hit the like button down below. It really does help me out. Subscribe to the channel, just do it. And then I'll catch you on the next super review, unless you're here live, in which case hang out. Let's have a little conversation. And in fact, while we're having this conversation, I'll actually go ahead and throw on the gold nozzles here on the KATO and see how different the frequency response is once I switch to those. But before I do that, I wanted to do a little bit of catching up with the live chat. So thank you all for the patience, and how's it going? Happy, what is it, good evening? Almost evening time here in California. Monday. But yeah, let me catch up with live chat as best as possible. This is a lot. But DNT Arc, dab for y'all's. Hey, appreciate you showing up early and always appreciate the dab. Jay Queasy, these look great. I gotta be honest, just physically, I think these things look pretty phenomenal. And then the cable that these things come on, I'm pretty happy about as well. Shimon, oh hi Mark, what's up? How you doing? Will Box with another dab. Dabs are not just for DNT Arc, anyone gets a dab. David K saying I'm a sucker for Moondrop, and I mean, I'm probably one of the bigger Moondrop Blessing fans out there, so I guess, and Moondrop SSR and Stardust. So yeah, you could describe me certainly as a Moondrop stan. In fact, I think I came out as a Moondrop stan during the Earphone of the Year Awards last year. Crash number 2, what's up? Pibby Boy, glad you can make it to this one. Coffee and Cam, what's up? How you doing? Edgar VA, what's up? Waiting for the much anticipated Kato versus Hana. And maybe as a quick preview of Kato versus Hana, we can go over to squig.link and take a look at that. So let me remove the star field and instead pull up the Hana squig. 2021 Hana. Oh, you had to make it blue, huh, Squiglink? Let's find a red. Give me red. All right. So here we've got the Tanchjim Hana 2021 in red versus the new Moondrop Kato in blue. And I'll just say up front, like these are very similar tonalities, but there are some pretty distinct differences here. So number one, the bass difference, that is not insignificant. Based on this frequency response, my expectation is that the bass character on the Hana is going to be a little bit stronger than on the Kato. Now, that's not always, like when you see this in a frequency response, it doesn't always actually come across that way because there's more to sort of bass perception than pure frequency response, but it's probably a good indicator if I'm honest. Otherwise, here through the mid-range, pretty similar. You do see a little bit of an extra shout. We'll begrudgingly call it here in the 2K region, but I think the bigger difference is going to be here in the presence region, where the Hana 2021 has got a little bit of a bump there, which keeps vocals, a little bit forward of that bass that is otherwise fairly forward in the mix. But you can see treble, it looks like there is a little bit more of the air quantities I would say air quantities here in the Hana 2021. But again, we'll have to find out in listening sessions if that actually plays out. But that's just kind of a preview of probably what to expect of Kato versus Hana 2021. And then I mentioned the Falcon, which is the new Dunu IM that I've got here on the table. And let me hide the Hana. We don't need that one for now. And recolor the Falcon. Yeah, let's go with green. And you can see here, the Falcon and the tuning on the Falcon is decidedly more different than the Kato and the Hana. At this point, I think I'm going to describe the Falcon as kind of like a warm, mild V shape. It's very similar in a lot of ways to the final E500, which I described as like warm neutral, but the bass content really does come across a lot stronger here on the Falcon. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is a mild but warm, decidedly warm V-shaped tuning. So I think of these three, the Falcon is the one with the more distinct frequency response, but how does that play into actual listening sessions? That's what the reviews will be for. Peace.exe saying 123 dB of sensitivity Gs. So that sensitivity rating, I believe, is in Moondrop typically uses the VRMS scale, which I'm less familiar with versus the somewhat more typical dB per milliwatt or whatever. Here's one thing I guess I'll say, and let's jump back over here so you can take a look. I measured the Kato and the Starfield at the same volume levels. at least the same volume setting here on the Apple dongle that I've got it coming out of. And you can see that the Starfield actually measures a little bit less loud versus the Kato, so the Kato is a little bit more sensitive than the Starfield per this measurement. And I think this is a pretty reliable indicator that you'll probably actually get a little bit more volume out of the Kato versus the Starfield, if you're familiar with that. And the Starfield's like not super sensitive. I would say it's average sensitivity. It's not hard to drive, but it's also not like super sensitive. And I would say, based on that squig, that my expectation is the Kato will be in a pretty similar space. It might be like a couple of dB louder, but not massive. Someone's saying the abbreviation. Oh my gosh. Thank you for pointing that out. I am, I suppose, blind is a word, but just unobservant. Sorry, who was it that pointed that out? Coffee and Cam. The abbreviation is on the right. I was talking about, is Kato an abbreviation or a name? Here you go. It's the Kxxs Advanced Technology Optimized, which is kind of an awkward collection of words, but it does spell out the name Kato. So maybe I should be okay capitalizing Kato. Nah. Cell Cook asking, is this another Starfield clone? Answer, no. This one's different. Obviously, the frequency response is pretty similar, and I haven't heard it yet, so to be determined. Try to pronounce that as one word. To be determined how different it actually is in listening. But this is a replacement to the Kxxs, which is a step above the Starfield, and at least in price. We'll find out how it is in terms of sound with the full review. David K saying that Kxxs Advanced Tech Optimized is almost as bad as the BLAN abbreviation, which is, oh man, can I remember these? What does BLAN stand for? Oh my gosh, I can't remember. I remember it means oppity and never give up. Or is that right? Oh my gosh, I should know this. I should know this. Belief, something, oppity, never give it up. Believe, oh, what does the L stand for? I feel like I want to figure this out. Someone's going to spoil it for me, but I want to figure it out. Let music burn. Thank you, David K. You were right. How could I forget Let Music Burn? Not Daijobu, what's up? Good to see you there. Rob Hawk, always good to see you too. Wizard saying the cable looks nice, and I gotta be honest, I totally agree. I think this is a very nice looking cable. Of the three here, just based on initial impressions, the cable here on the Hana, it's a fine cable. It's decent, like it looks tidy. It's a little bit stiff and memory prone, but I give this cable a pass, but I don't love it. The cable here on the Falcon, I do like better than the cable here. Also maybe a tad on the stiff side, but generally a pretty solid cable. And then here, with the Kxxs, I gotta say, on first impression, I wanna say it's about on par with the cable here, but a little bit thicker, which could give it a little bit of an extra sense of luxury. Yeah, just again, based on first impressions, I think these two have a cable advantage over the Hana 2021, if that matters to you. Adam Mobius saying finally a chin slider, and I agree. And D&T Arc, you're saying you use a butterfly knife for the plastic. I would be afraid of using a butterfly knife to cut the plastic off of these things, but maybe you're better. I mean, I've seen you with a butterfly knife. You are better with a knife than I am, but I'd still be afraid. Planet J saying, I usually hide Moondrop boxes on arrival and then sneak it out to the bin. Such a shame. Yeah, I understand what you're talking about. I gotta say, I think this one's, it's mostly tasteful. That's a pretty decent box. I won't hide it from my wife. Salad Knight asking, would I rather get a Moondrop Starfield or a Legacy 2? I'm trying to remember if I made that comparison in my Legacy 2 review. I might not have. The Legacy 2 is going to be a more neutral sound signature, maybe a little bit more boring. The Starfield's got a little bit better sense of depth, but I think for me, I probably would go with the Legacy 2, but I don't know, different moods. Do you want something that's a little bit warmer, fuller, and bassier, maybe a little bit stronger dimension, or do you just want that mid-range tonality with, and I'll give this to the Legacy 2 especially, excellent top-tier ergonomics, which is honestly part of why I really like that earphone. Adam Mobius saying, I wonder if those ear tips would be better for people for whom Blessing 2 sticks out of their ears. That will be worth trying for sure. I'm going to do some playing around with these ear tips. Now, as for using these things in the Blessing, it is worth calling out a couple of things. One, you're going to have to make sure that this thing will stretch over the nozzle of the Blessing 2, which I'm sure I can figure it out, but it is fairly narrow and actually may be worth punching in. If you can see this, it's actually kind of like two widths. You can see that the outer diameter of the nozzle is quite a bit wider than the innermost diameter of the ear tip barrel. I don't know, what do we want to call that? So I'm not sure how this thing will fit onto a Blessing 2. There's basically, it's going to be hard for me to demonstrate, but it looks like there's basically a little shelf down in here that's meant to grip onto a protrusion on the ear tip, that, like you see here with the Kato. Actually, on that point too, worth calling out that Moondrop a lot of the times doesn't include or doesn't put like protrusions on their nozzles. Because of that, sometimes ear tips fall off a little bit easy. Looks like that won't be a problem here with the Kato, which is kind of cool. What's up, Non-Min? Glad you can make it too. And yes, I will do a nozzle swap, maybe right now. Let's go ahead and do the nozzle swap and measure that and squig that and see how it compares to the stock silver nozzle here on the Kato. So pull this off, and as I suggested, this is just kind of like a simple screw mechanism. Unscrews like so. If you want to see inside, probably not a lot to see, but you can see it looks like the dynamic driver there. Otherwise, let's take one of these nozzles off the board and screw it in here. It is nice that the nozzles are entirely different colors, so there's not going to be really any accidentally mixing them up. Although maybe worth remembering that the stock nozzle is the silver nozzle and the gold nozzle is the secondary nozzle. Now, is it a brighter nozzle? Is it a warmer nozzle? I actually don't know at this point. So let's try and put this away and let's figure that out. Gotta be tidy. You gotta take your time with organization as best as possible when you have the moment, because otherwise I'm gonna drop this thing on the floor and never find it again. I appreciate your patience. Okay, there we go. So now we have got the Kato all kitted up in its gold nozzle configuration. Let's go ahead and throw it up on the old microphone and take a look at the frequency response. All right, I want people to guess right now. Is this going to be a brighter tune, or is it going to be a warmer tune? Taking bets now. It looks almost exactly the same. Interesting. Okay, let me pull up Kato Gold L. So here we're looking at the L channel measurement that I took before. Let me go ahead and make this one blue so we can see the difference. But honestly, not a lot of difference here. That's interesting. It looks like it's mostly in that sort of extended treble spike region where I talked about, you know, that can be sort of a hit or miss thing, where this little spike in the extended treble in the Starfield and the Aria can give them a bit of a sense of air, but it can also be a little bit irritating to people. I'm curious if they very intentionally reduced that peak to address, you know, concerns with the people who are irritated by it, but also gave people the nozzles so that they could bring it back if they wanted to. Was that the intent? Because that looks like it was almost exactly what we got. Let me throw the right channel in real quickly and measure it. Well, that does look pretty consistent. That one's a little bit too far in though, so let me do that one again. Because we've been so successful with these, I want to make them all good. Fail. Let's try again. But yeah, it's interesting that that appears to be what the nozzle does. Is it just affects the really upper treble frequencies. Okay, that looks pretty good. And as you can see, channel matching, I would say, is exemplary. Wait, is that good? Yeah, it's not bad. We'll go with it. So there you go. That is how the gold nozzle measures here on the Kato. Questions answered. Adam Mobius, thanks for calling out. You heard the leaf blower, but it wasn't too loud. Good. Glad it wasn't too loud. But sorry it was annoying. Planet J saying the leaf blower was adding interest while doing multiple squigs. Okay, yeah, as long as there was like some sort of background music, just to keep the party alive, I suppose. And yeah, also just to call out too, I just made the measurements here with the golds, the gold nozzles. I will throw that up on squig.link as well. I'll do that after the review or after this video, just so you don't have to see me do too much JSON editing. It's not that exciting. Kanal asking, any idea what the different nozzle materials are? And no, I don't know that there's any documentation about the metal materials. And sometimes when they make these nozzles, these swappable nozzles, I'm looking at the literature here just in case there's something said about it. But sometimes when they make these swappable nozzles, the tuning difference is achieved by, you know, changing like the shape of the nozzle, changing like the diameter on the inside. Sometimes it's achieved by changing dampening material inside of the nozzle, and sometimes apparently it's achieved by changing the metal, the actual makeup of the metal. That one to me seems like a little bit far-fetched, but I don't make earphones, so it is possible that changing the metal of a nozzle will change the frequency response, but I don't know about that one. But yeah, as far as I can tell, I don't see any obvious description of the metals. I'll look real quickly on the back of the box now before I give up. And I give up. I don't know what kind of metals they are. Shimon asking, what do I think of the Safari redesigns? I think you're asking about, I'm guessing in iOS, because they've redesigned Safari in iOS a little bit. I actually haven't used it too much because mostly in iOS, I actually use the Chrome browser, primarily just because it syncs my like history and URLs and stuff like that from my desktop to my phone. It's actually in some ways a worse browser than Safari is on the iPhone. Safari on iPhone is very good. And I noticed that they moved the URL bar to the bottom, which is a curious mix. I don't know how I like it for squig.link, but I'll have to play around with that a little bit more. I guess the short version is I haven't played with it too much. Gabriel Kato, no, Kato, your name is Kato. What's up? That's right. What's up? You got here too late for the party. I don't think you're ever too late. This is a party for you, right? Crash saying, off topic, Moondrop says they will unveil something around October 15th. One file engineer says on forums that they may be doing a Bluetooth DAP with 4.4 at the end of the year. Interesting. Okay. Something potentially to look forward to, although I have not heard about those. So I can either confirm or deny. Hiran Patel, what's up? Double burrito. You're saying you don't think it looks like a double burrito. The double burrito target curve is Hiran's ideal frequency response, which I think at this point is basically the Sony WF XM4s. Not a bad frequency response. Still catching up with live chat. Thank you all for the patience. Crash saying, I heard the Falcon Pro nozzle is actually compatible with the Kato. And I'll be honest, that is going to be a thing I'm not going to try. Let's say let's pull these things out. Let's say these swappable nozzles are in fact the same size as the swappable nozzles in here. There is a very real possibility, I'm not saying it is the case, but there is a possibility that the threads are close enough that they will work, but that they're actually different enough that you can potentially actually cause damage to the threads. So these threads are pretty fine. I don't know how hard this metal material is, but if this is like a stainless steel or something like that, and you twisted this into a nozzle that was about the same size, but maybe a slightly different thread pitch, you very seriously run the risk of actually damaging the threads and loosening the effectiveness of that thread. So for me, not a thing I'm particularly interested in testing, because there's no guarantee if you do that damage too, again, and that might not actually be a problem, but if you do that damage, there's no guarantee that that damage is going to be done to just the nozzle and not done to the IM itself, which would be an even bigger problem. So I'm personally afraid of doing that. That's right. But if you're brave enough, do it. Just if you do damage to it, you kind of have yourself to blame. Skeletron Prime, what's up? That has a good name. Saying Falcon Pro is looking good, and I agree. I think, frankly, these are all pretty good-looking earphones. Although, again, I do think that the Hana is the one that's going to be the most polarizing aesthetic. I'd say both the Falcon here and the Kato, pretty universally handsome. This one's going to be either you love it or you hate it. But all in all, some pretty handsome looking IEMs. For around $200, not too shabby. Planet J saying, I really wish the Hana looked different. I think it's probably a comment to what I was alluding to just a bit ago. I mean, if you want the Hana sound in an IM that looks more like the Kato and the Falcon, they actually make that IM. It's called the Tangentium Oxygen. It costs more, but it's silver. Shinku saying the Hana looks like medical equipment. I mean, I think that's probably a reference to Tangentium's logo here, which does look like something you expect on like an RX sign or something like that. I'm not sure what the history of it is, except that Gem, from what I understand, is some sort of combination of words that essentially translates to Angel Jimmy. Not joking. And maybe that's a picture of Angel Jimmy. And I see some fierce disagreement with Jay saying, Shimon saying, what are you saying? WTF, Hana looks goated, and Nodmen saying gold nuggets good. So there you go. Like I said, it's kind of a love it or hate it look. Anupam, what's up? Kato hype. Hi, Mark. Hi, Anupam. Mandoff saying Hana versus Kato, very interesting. And yeah, I think this is going to be a pretty interesting comparison. I'm going to take my time with it. It's like I'm not going to rush to the review of the Kato. This just arrived today, so I did rush to do the unboxing first look and stuff, so you can take a look at that. And if you kind of want real-time thoughts that I'm developing on the Kato as I listen to it, I actually do recommend joining my Discord server, where I've got a room dedicated. I've got a channel dedicated to the Moondrop KATO, and I'll be dropping links to, you know, things like the frequency responses, comparisons, and also be dropping in some early thoughts on what I think about the sound. Doesn't stand in for the review. Like I mentioned, I do want to take my time with this review and make sure that I come to you with a strong opinion that I can stand behind for probably, you know, again, I think that how these three IMs compare is going to be pretty relevant for the next year or so. So I want to make sure it's a good review. Anupam, now what does Kxxs stand for? That's no one will ever know. What if the K in Kxxs stands for Kato, and then the K in Kato stands for Kxxs? That would be next level troll. Jasper saying hi from the Philippines. I'm using the FIO FH3. Is it worth it to use a $10 ear tips or change ear tips? Thanks. If you're happy with the ear tips, don't worry about it. Like, really the only reason I switch ear tips is to change fit. It's not, I mean, sometimes they'll change the frequency response a little bit, but for the most part, when I'm changing ear tips, it really is all about making sure I get a good fit. And with the stock ear tips that come on the FH3, honestly, I'm happy with those. Those are still the ear tips that I have on my FH3, even though I have experimented with other ear tips on the FH3, but I keep coming back to the stock ones. Like, I think it's a pretty solid ear tip. Again, if you have particular issues for yourself with regards to fit, another ear tip, even if it's like a $10 ear tip, might actually help you out with that. But if you don't have any problems, I just wouldn't worry about it. Upgrading ear tips, right? Upgrading cables and stuff like that. If you're in it for trying to get better sound, I think is how do I say this nicely? It's kind of a waste of time. That wasn't very nice. Yeah, tips and cables, get them for how they feel, how they fit in your ears, how you like them, even just for aesthetics. I think that's a valid reason. If you're worried about getting a totally different sound by changing ear tips or really upgrading the sound, I generally don't expect that. Tonkytron saying the Blessing 2 has tree trunk nozzles. It is true. The Blessing 2, which I think I've got sitting over here, quite thick in the nozzles. Bradford, what's up? Late, that's fine. Oh, interesting. So I got to now the part where everyone was guessing whether or not the gold ear tips would be brighter or darker or warmer, and it looks like I'm gonna go and give congratulations to Coffee and Cam, Adam Mobius, Knall, Will's Box, and Crash. Congratulations, you all got it wrong. Now, unfortunately, Jace, that means you got it wrong. Better luck next time. It was not a warmer sound, at least not based on the frequency response. Tim Baxter saying, I replaced the cable on the Blessing 2 with an AliExpress 8 core. I want to say they sound more open, or is it in my head? I don't know. I don't know the particulars of that cable. What I will say is that the Blessing 2 Dusk is a balanced armature set, or it's a hybrid. So changing the impedance on the cable can result in small changes to the frequency response, potentially big changes depending on how much of impedance you're adding with that cable. But for the most part, most cables are really between like 0.1 and 0.5 ohms impedance. And I find that changing that level of impedance does not really result in an audible difference to me. That's on most IMs. I haven't played around with it too much on the Blessing 2. It's not a super sensitive IM, so I wouldn't expect it to be significantly affected, but again, I haven't actually tested it. And again, changing impedance can definitely change the frequency response of a balanced armature set. It's just kind of a matter of degrees, and is it a degree to which you can actually hear. If you swapped on like a 15 ohm impedance cable, I guarantee you would hear that difference. I don't know what it would make it sound like, but I guarantee you'd be able to hear that. RJC just got here. How are we liking these? Well, I haven't heard them yet. We just unboxed it. We measured the frequency response, and as far as I can tell, based on the signals that I have at this point, I'm pretty excited about listening to this thing, but I haven't listened to it yet. So I guess that's where I'm at, which is not the most informative position to be in, but at least we know what the frequency response is. And I am wrapping this thing up so that we can enjoy it here in its roadie wrapped glory. That's beautiful, isn't it? That's not a bad roadie wrap. One thing I will say is this cable is a slight bit tacky, which just means that as I'm winding it up, like when the cable rubs against itself, it can grip itself a smidge bit. James Lindbergh saying that Brave browser syncs like Chrome and doesn't track as much data recommended. Yeah, I mean, I think Safari also does it. I just happen to be a big Google user in general. So I'm signed into Google Chrome on my desktops, and there's just a lot of things that kind of like integrate with Chrome that I enjoy that portability. I understand the concerns with ad trackers and stuff like that. I'm generally not too worried about that for myself, but certainly don't begrudge anyone else that is concerned about that kind of stuff. When I see an ad for a thing that I looked at somewhere else on the internet, I don't know, does it bother me? Not really. No. What's funny is when I start seeing ads for things that I think my wife is looking for because we have like the same IP address when she's at home. That one's funny. But it also, that makes me worry. I think probably the biggest problem I would have is if I was like researching something for her as like a gift, and then that started showing up in her ads. That could be a problem, but otherwise, I don't know. I'm not doing anything fun and illegal on the internet, so I'm not too worried about it, but yeah, I guess that's where I'm at. Kxxs saying, curious to see if the Kato will hold up to scratches over time, especially with the polished finish. Yeah, I'd be interested to hear from folks who have the Kxxs and have had it for a couple of years. How has the mirrored finish on the Kxxs held up? I mean, I'll just say up front, like, I tend to take care of my IMs, so like I don't, and by take care of, I mean I don't use them very much, right? I use them for a review, and then I throw them in a box and I pull them out of the box whenever I need to compare them to something. So my IMs don't really tend to get abused the way that a lot of folks who just really daily drive their IMs, throw them in a backpack, go on commutes and stuff like that. You're subjecting it to a lot different environmental factors than I ever really do. So for me, I expect at the end of this review, even if I spend a couple of weeks reviewing this thing, it'll probably look the way that it looks right now. But yeah, I would be interested to hear from folks who've had the Kxxs for a couple of years. How's the polished finish look? Cook asking, would I recommend upgrading from the Aria to the Blessing 2? It really depends on what you're looking for in the sound signature. I very much think the Blessing 2 is a better IM than the Aria, but I could actually imagine some folks that prefer the Aria because they're so different. The Moondrop Blessing 2 is closer to a neutral sound signature. It's much more focused on the mid-range, especially just like really, really high mid-range transparency and micro contrast and stuff like that. Whereas the Aria is a little bit stronger on the bass, a little bit warmer of a tune, more laid back, a more relaxing tune and less analytical. So again, for that reason, they're very, very different. So if that sounds like what you're looking for, yeah, the Blessing 2 is a good upgrade. I tend to not use the word upgrade because it's not like the Blessing 2 is just the Aria, but better. It's a different earphone. Whereas something like the Hana 2021 here, I think this is actually a fairly easy upgrade to the Aria because it's very similar to the Aria in a lot of ways, but I think it's better. There's really nothing about the Aria that I like better than this. So there you go. And I'm curious now, maybe the Kato will be that replacement, an alternative, TBD. WS, Blessing 2 or Dusk or Kato? Well, I haven't heard the Kato yet, so can't say. Have a feeling they'll be pretty different though. Animation, is this better than the Kxxs? Don't know yet. Haven't heard it. And Calvin RR, the price on the Kato is the same, I believe, as the Kxxs, so $190 US. And yeah, Coffee and Cam, thanks for answering the question before I got to it. But just in case you missed it, Nick Crin asking about which IMs this is. This is the Tantrum Hana 2021, the latest Hana. The chick, you're late. That's okay. That's okay. There's always next time. Glad you can make it though. So your question, is there a big difference in sound when you change the filter? We made that frequency response comparison here, so just to take a look. The red line is with the stock silver filters, and the blue line is with the gold filter. And you can see frequency response is almost exactly the same with a little bit of deviation here in the really upper treble. So for the most part, it doesn't actually look like it's going to sound too different based on the frequency response. Maybe a little bit airier with the gold nozzles, but we'll find out as I listen to it. Sangram, what's my go-to IEM as of today? Probably still the Moondrop Blessing 2. That's an IEM that obviously I reviewed it about a year and a half ago. Had a lot of good things to say about it over the past year and a half. But as I'm reviewing things, a lot of the times, like, I just don't have time to go back to listen to my favorite things. But the Blessing 2 is one that I went back and listened to, I think when I was reviewing the C Audio Bravery. And it was just a really nice welcome reminder of how much I love the Blessing 2. I was like, wow, this thing is really still very good. Rob Hawk saying my Kxxs still looks brand new. So there you go. There's a anecdote, a report, a data point on the question of whether or not the finish here on the Kato will last over time. The one thing, it's funny actually, I didn't even really notice it while unboxing it. The Kato does have a small bit of print down here. Let's see if I can even get it to show up on the camera very well. You see that down there? It's the Kato. I kind of wish they didn't do that. Like, it's hard to see, it doesn't add much. Maybe it'll wear off or something, maybe it won't, but even if it doesn't, it's just, I feel like it would look better without it. Probably more visible with the matte finish version though. And Cell Cook, the Hana 2021, I believe is $180. So basically the same price here as the Kato. Very much in competition. Vitor Machado saying, oh, strong word, saying the Aria certainly looks a lot better than the Hana. Bold claim. I think I agree. I actually like the original Hana, the all white one. I thought that was a pretty good look, nice and fresh for sure. The gold accents. It's not even accents, just the gold overwhelmingness of the new Hana. I'm not the biggest fan of. The chick asking, is the cable the new K-line? So that's actually, I think that's a good question, and I wish I had a better answer for you. My understanding is that, again, you pre-order the Kato right now, Moondrop. They've got something on there on Shenzhen Audio and Hi-Fi Go saying that you get a different cable that comes with it. This is the stock cable, as far as I understand. This is just the one that comes with it normally. Whether or not this is K-line cable or not, I don't really know too much about the branding, but from what I know, this is not quite the upgrade cable that comes with pre-orders. KD asking, do I think the frequency response of the Kato is similar to the Illumination? And well, that is actually a question that we can answer. Go ahead and remove these real quickly. So here we've got our frequency response of the Kato, and I can pull up the Illumination. And I can, before I do this, I can already predict a couple of differences. I think the bass on the Illumination is more relaxed, upper mid-range, maybe a little bit more forward, and treble air is actually probably a little bit darker on the Illumination. And that is, in fact, just about what we see here. Let's change colors for optimal clarity. That's a very bright green. There you go. So yeah, you can see here in the sub bass and mid bass, yeah, mostly in the sub bass though, pretty big discrepancy there. It looks like about 4 or 5 dB more sub bass on the Kato. Otherwise, the mid-range tonality is kind of similar. Although here again with the presence region, you get a little bit more forwardness on the Illumination. And then here in the treble, it's a little bit more roll off on the Illumination as well. So I would say that the Kato, just based on this, is gonna be, you know, not too far off the Illumination in terms of tonal response, just because Moondrop is again kind of always aiming for roughly the same target. But I think the Kato is going to be a little bit more contrasty, more extension in the bass, more extension in the treble. It's going to add a little bit more of a contrasty, maybe less mid-range focused sound signature. But folks, I think that is going to have to do it here for the first look, unboxing, and squigging of the Moondrop Kato. Like I mentioned, I will throw up the frequency response of the gold nozzles onto squig.link right after this video, but wanted to thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for hanging out and having a conversation, for the questions, and for letting me know about Kato actually stands for Kxxs. Can't say that. Advanced Technology Optimized. But yeah, really appreciate it, and hope you enjoyed the stream. If you did, do hit the like button down below. Helps me out. Subscribe to the channel if you aren't already, and I'll catch you on the next super review. Have a good week.